Welcome back to Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and this week I have my final Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom for 2018. I'm going to do a solo show early January to sort of catch everybody up and say Happy New Year. And today, though, is pretty special to me. I have one of my very best friends, and if you know me in Beijing, you probably know my next guest, Susie Qin, is a guest, and she is a Chinese person, an actual Chinese person, as I like to say sometimes, with love and respect. And occasionally I do have people on Big Fish who are not foreigners come to China, but people who are Chinese who have worked or traveled or studied abroad to whatever degree and have possibly considered or have lived or worked overseas, but who have decided to come back and really make China their home. And Susie is a very special case in this sense. She has quite a journey, and we get into a lot of material that is a lot deeper than even my deepest and my normal Big Fish. I will say this, I will also put this in the show notes. I guess I feel obliged to, in the, politically correct parlance of saying that there's a trigger warning here about domestic violence. Susie wanted to discuss some issues having to do with growing up in the extreme version of the drinking culture, living up in Inner Mongolia, on the border of Mongolia, and she specifically talks about some domestic violence concerning her dad when she was young. And gets fairly revealing about this. It's very emotional. And after the fact, I asked her, I even cut out of the interview you hear, I asked her if she wanted to keep going, and she wanted to continue it. She wanted to leave it in, not to be maudlin, and not to hurt, not to send a message to her parents. They don't speak English. They'll never hear this. But for her, she realized it was an honest part of her story, and she felt compelled to say it. And fortunately, it does end up with a more happy ending, as dark as it was, as dark as the things she discusses are for a few minutes in the interview, roughly around minutes, between 20 and 25 minutes in is kind of that section. But there is ultimately a redemption aspect. So, if you do get to that and it's difficult material and you feel like you need to skip ahead, I would say that I'm recording this before all the pieces are assembled, but I believe it's going to be about, say, 26, 27 minutes in where the redemption aspect of this narrative kicks in. And then we move on to other topics. But I do really want to give this note. I won't say too much in the spirit of the holidays and Christmas. It would be nice to keep it super light. But honestly, this kind of thing is a part of my childhood, and I won't make this about me. I actually had a big chunk that we discussed that I cut most of it out. You'll hear a tiny little bit of me referencing the Brendan Davis story, which you don't really hear so much of it in the actual finished interview. But nonetheless, I want to be honest and sincere. It's also part of why, as I look ahead here to 2019, I'm going to be changing up how I do some things. I'm going to be reformatting how I do Big Fish a bit. We're going to take a hiatus until I've thrown out a few dates. I'm not going to commit to a date yet. I will be back with a special New Year's episode a few days into the new year, as I mentioned, and I'm going to have some thoughts and catch up and some fun stuff talking about these next few months of my life, which are pretty interesting for me, and they're going to impact how I do the show. I'll be doing the show remotely for the most part. I will also be finding some Chinese people in Los Angeles, where I'll be based now for a few months, and get their stories. I'll also do some Skype interviews with people back in China who have been on the books, and we're just coordinating timing. And I'll have my regular feature with Kevin Geiger, the Fretful Lao Wai. We'll do that as well in late January. But, as I look ahead to 2019, again, I'll have more to say about this in the solo show right after the new year, but the big changes are going to be focused on making this show and anything I do reflect, my reality as a host. It's not a dry interview show. It never has been intended to be that, which again is part of why I'm really happy. Although it was hard, it was also very cathartic for Susie to share what she shares in this interview. And it's, it feels honest to put it out there. And I think even if you have dealt with a similar difficult situation, you will, I believe you'll find it moving. And, I try to edit out still quite a bit out so as not to be, to play too much on anyone's emotions. It's just very unedited as far as the chunk that I kept in. I didn't make a single edit in what she says. I just cut out some follow up and some things that are probably best to keep private. But nonetheless, I want you to enjoy this. If this sounds different, I am in a Airbnb in beautiful Palo Alto, California. I had a flight back to the U.S. yesterday, and I'll talk about this in detail again, as I've said now several times on my show that's a solo show. But I'm in Palo Alto for a few days, and then I fly down to Los Angeles, where I'll be based for the better part of 3 months, with a few trips in between. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy this show. I hope everyone has had a good holiday. If you've had a holiday, or if you are totally on a Chinese schedule, I hope you at least have a nice New Year's, and that you're looking forward to Spring Festival. Now, please enjoy my interview with Susie Qin. Well, I am super happy on this special holiday edition of Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom to be here with one of my very bestest friends of all the people I know in Beijing, Ms. Susie Qin. How are you, Susie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm glad that I could convince you to be on here. We'll talk about this more later, but you are a big podcast fan, and so you're very knowledgeable about the world of podcasts at this point. I have my traditional first question that I modify when the person is actually a Chinese person in China. So my first question for you is, please give us the short version of who you are, where you're from, and in your case, why Beijing?
My name is Qin, Susie Qin. Qin as Qin. It's a lot of times people can't pronounce my family name really well. Sometimes it goes king or queen or something.
Oh, those aren't bad versions, but it's not right. So you want to hear it right.
So it's Qin. It's from Qin dynasty. It's a very, very old dynasty. The capital was in Shanxi province. That's where my grandpa came from.
And so why Beijing for you? We're going to get into your story here in just a moment in some detail, but why are you in Beijing specifically? You could be pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I spent 4 years in Tianjin studying in university. Mm-hmm. It was so cold in South China. I just can't stand it. After graduation, I was thinking about go to either Shanghai or coming back to Beijing. Unfortunately, there weren't much opportunities in Shanghai because, lots of university were there.
Right, a lot of graduates sort of competing in the job market.
Yeah, so I just came back where I'm comfortable, North China.
Nice. Well, let's talk about let's go in the Wayback Machine, and I will have set this up as we talked about beforehand in the intro a bit, where you have, to me again, why have somebody on who's you're like, I'm not a normal Big Fish guest. Well, you are the kind of Big Fish guest that I like to get on here sometimes to give perspective, right, about trying to increase, as I talk about on my other new podcast of increasing empathy both ways, is understand about people who live and work here, right? And you're not trying to go out to America or do these things. You're from here and you're proud to be from here, but you have this wide vision of the world. And you came from a place that is a place that a lot of people don't know much about, but actually talk a bit about your hometown and how your family ended up where you're from in Inner Mongolia.
Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting story, as I recall.
I'm from Inner Mongolia. Even a lot of Chinese people can't tell the difference of Inner Mongolia and the Mongolia, the country.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is the difference for the sake of people listening?
Just people
I've learned
in
from all
Mongolia.
my trips to and from across the border for visa issues, but what's the difference?
Inner Mongolia belong to China.
Right.
We're Chinese.
It's the Chinese side of the border with Mongolia, basically.
But Mongolia, the country, is another country. So I spent a lot of time explaining that to my classmates in Nanjing. They don't know about it. They always call me Mongolian.
They just don't know.
The Mongolian girl.
And you're Han Chinese ethnically.
Yeah.
You're like...
True.
Yeah. But how did your family? And the thing is, again, your family is ethnically you're Han Chinese folks, and yeah, Inner Mongolia is China, but you have a lot of mixing, and you had a Mongolian people on the China side of the border. It's a much more diverse, like that strip. You have much more kind of ethnic diversity. Yeah. So having somebody who's like straight up Han Chinese there is not necessarily the norm. How did your grandpa choose to get up to Inner Mongolia? Because I understand he was the person who first kind of planted the flag for your family.
Yeah, that's a family tradition. Every time my grandpa would tell his story to all our kids about the journey he, walked to Inner Mongolia. That is many, many, many years ago. My grandpa was he was born in Shanxi province. Mm-hmm. And, people from the old, capital city or capital province, they do not want to go anywhere. They want to stay at the, most important city, important province as their, parent, as their Asian parent would be. They want to stay there.
There's a lot of hometown pride. There's a big history, so they kind of feel proud of where they're from.
Yeah, that's the thing about pride. And it's just, my grandpa told me that he was just so hungry. There's just no food. And, unfortunately, his dad had these drug problems. Yes, many, many years ago, people would have the access to different, maybe
Was
opium?
This opium? Yeah.
I guess that's opium.
Yeah, legacy of the opium wars.
Yeah, his dad just do not care about families and nothing he cares about. And he and his brothers got no food, and just walking to other places might be the only choice if you do not want to die. So my grandpa just keep walking north and walking. And eventually he arrived in Mongolia. Mm-hmm. And the people there, especially the Mongolian, the minority people, were so friendly. They gave my grandpa the meat, the milk tea. And my grandpa was so happy that he doesn't want to keep walking. He just want to settle down. Mm-hmm. And, my grandpa from the more civilized, quote unquote, more civilized places, he brought all the, my grandpa was a carpenter. I'm thinking building stuff and building houses. And then he met my grandma. My grandma was actually born in Inner Mongolia.
Okay.
That is, her parents, like another kind of version of my grandpa.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandma parents, moved to Inner Mongolia to, the trading businesses.
Okay.
Then my grandma born there, and my grandpa and my grandma and built this whole family. And my grandpa also brought all the whole, relatives to Inner Mongolia. Then all, my parents, my dad born there, and also met my mom there, and then there was me born there. So I'm very proud of, although I'm not Mongolian, but right. I'm so proud of our culture. Yeah, I take Mongolian culture as my culture.
Yeah.
I love the whole culture there. Even one time when I was in the States, I met a girl. She's from Mongolia, the country Mongolia.
Right.
Somehow I think we're from the same place. Yeah, I take her as we're from the hometown. We're from the same area. Although she doesn't speak Chinese, I don't speak a damn word of
right.
Mongolian.
As I embarrassed myself once when I was stuck in there, and I know your story, but also when you're stuck and you barely have a signal and you think you're going to get detained in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Not even the foreign country where you actually live, but another foreign country.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you help? And you're like, I can't, that's Mongolian. I don't speak that. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
But you got like a friend, you got some friend or somebody to help me translate something so I could figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because again, I know this was something interesting about when you go to, when you go to Inner Mongolia or Mongolia, there is like the people, they just become, now you're petite. So you're an exception, but you're a hardy person. But you tend to find a lot of big people, right? It's horse country. You find big men, big women, very typically, because they have an abundance. They have meat and they have milk, and so that's kind of their thing. And so they grow the big, strong, sturdy folks. And so meat and dairy products are pretty cheap, relatively speaking. But vegetables are expensive because you got a lot of desert.
Oh, yes.
And then, of course, here in the mainland, especially you get more toward the city, it's sort of the opposite. Yeah. Nice meat becomes pricey, but they can grow the vegetables.
There's an interesting thing that I ate preserved vegetables when I grew up. I do not know much vegetables until I went to college in Tianjin. There are so many names of different vegetables. I don't know which one is which one. That freaks me out.
Yeah, you didn't realize the variety. You thought that what you could buy canned at the store was that was it? Like your 10 or 20 things was like
the
what
only
existed?
vegetable I'm familiar with is cabbage and potatoes.
Wow.
When I grown up.
That's a fairly, and me with my heavily Irish family background. Yeah. Like genetically we're wired to appreciate potatoes.
But I'm doing really well with milk. I don't know. I don't have the problems of, Chinese people don't drink enough milk, that a lot of people have this
their lactose intolerance is a weird thing. And the milk they have is not, by Western standards, it ain't really milk. I mean, it's not. It's watery and it's super watery, and it's like milk drink basically. Yeah. And I'm not a milk fan anyway. And right now people are going, "This is great radio." No.
But for us, from Mongolian people, inner Mongolian people, milk is kind of like a food to us.
Well, you have this. You have the rich cream and even the drink. One of those popular alcoholic drinks is basically vodka plus a heavy cream milk and some salt. And I don't care for it, but people who like it love it.
It was so good that I remember me and my elder sister, my cousin elder sister.
Your cousin sister.
Yeah, I make milk tea in Chinese New Year. During the night, me and my sister just drinking milk tea and talk the whole night.
Was this with the vodka, or was this just the? I mean, you're a grown up. You can say that's what you're saying. You're drinking that drink,
the traditional.
Yes, you're drinking the traditional. Well, so what was the world was like? So it's, agriculture, but like wrangling animals, hard living. It grows people with a real sturdy kind of folks, right? So what was the world like up there?
Actually, it's kind of misunderstanding that people thought, Mongolian people live only on grassland and moving here and there.
Right, that's more the Mongolia
side
of the border.
It's pretty much like anywhere else in China. There are cities, there are grassland. Most people live in the city. From where I'm from, there's not much of grassland. There are a lot of a desert. Mm. Yeah, it's a little bit different from people, the traditional image of the.
Right, but there's coal mining and stuff up there, right, in that part of the country.
Oh yeah. It's the thing that when people from natural resources. There's a lot of natural resources, not only coal mine, also natural gas.
Oh yeah, and there's oil up there too, right? Because I know at least down in Harbin and stuff, there's a whole bunch of oil and that chain. Yeah. That's a big petroleum capital here, which is the same general geographical. Yeah, my hometown
called Erdos. It was famous for the coal mine and wooden shirt.
Wooden shirt.
Sweater. The sweater.
The wool. The woolen.
Yeah, the
shirt,
wool
right?
shirt. Or the cashmere, fancy cashmere,
right.
And natural gas. it was traditionally famous that there are three things, but the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin? Bitcoins.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hometown got so much natural power that this is the place.
Has it become a place where they're building the Bitcoin farms?
A lot of machines.
Or the blockchain farms, I should say?
Yeah.
Wow.
Machines was there too because it needs a lot of electricity. Mm-hmm. It's not good. It's actually not, doesn't bring much technologies there. The blockchain was there just because of the
basically cheap
electricity.
Power?
Yeah, cheap power.
But you didn't really have a tech sector take off in Erdos, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately.
Well, speaking of this, and because I know you so well and I know your story, I know things, but I mean, let's talk about the growing up. And you actually I'm glad you mentioned you were going to talk about a few things that maybe people don't always, kind of lay out there. But I think it's interesting. I mean, I've certainly talked about my, more challenging aspects of my growing up because it helps to make you who you are and it helps inform who somebody becomes. And also, again, because this show, as you know from listening, is a lot about trying to humanize experience. Again, people look at China as a monoculture, right? Like it's all one thing, and it's not all one thing. And there are things about your childhood that most of my friends can relate to back home, actually. So, what was it like for you growing up? I mean, there's a lot of good side, and you grew up, you're only child, and that's kind of typical for like this period in Chinese history.
Yeah, totally. I am an only child. Before that, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of families got 2 or even more kids. But maybe last year, the policy changes to a 2-child policy. So we're kind of the generations, like only child generation here.
Right.
I grown up, I got no brothers and sisters except cousin brothers and sisters, which I'm really close to because we grown up together. Sure. One of my cousin sisters also live in Beijing too. All the other cousin sisters and brothers back to my hometown. I was in Beijing because of one of my close cousin brothers was studying in Beijing. Since he was here, I'm thinking about maybe that's a good place I'm go to so that I can have. Oh, my brother Duan Lei, he's been years of my emergency contact.
Emergency contact.
Contact.
Oh, if you need help with something in Beijing.
Yeah, until he just moved back to my hometown.
So he lives in Erdos again.
Yeah.
Awesome. But so you told me your parents are very open-minded, and in what ways? What ways would you say?
In what ways? My parents are not like, a lot of kids' parents, they're scholars or something highly educated. My parents are not. They are just, they give everything they could support me, especially they told me that whenever you want to go, whatever you want to learn, we're going to be 100% supportive. That's my parents. They never like other parents, like my sister, my cousin sister's parents that are fully like controlling. My parents are totally not like that. Another example is that, I'm totally being cool with not being married, not being single, not being married. I have my own timeline.
You're in your early 30s, and you got the pressure. You got the freedom from the kind of pressure that's typically a really onerous thing. Yeah, that sort of. Yeah, I mean, some people welcome it, but for somebody like you, it would be onerous. Yeah, with your spirit.
Yeah, and my parents never been like pushing you to why you're not married. You need to bring, somebody to the home. Yeah. My parents never like that. I'm very fortunate. Young people get this pressure, the stress to get married. It's not always the case. A lot of, parents are being very cool, being very respect of their kids' choice. Yes. I'm fortunate that I have those kind of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, occasionally my dad would ask me, "Can I take a look of your boyfriend's picture?"
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. Yeah. Occasionally.
What do you tell him?
I would say, maybe not.
yeah, your face was leading before your words are coming out. So I'm laughing looking at your face going, okay, not so much.
Yeah.
So growing up in Inner Mongolia and the proximity to Mongolia proper, of course, gave you this proximity to, all this great food. You had all this meat. You could grow up strong and healthy and interesting, diverse culture. And I know, again, I know the parts that I've been in Inner Mongolia and then across the border, it's really interesting. And it's a melting pot of kind of lots of different folks who are up there. But there is a downside. And again, we're good friends. And so I know the story and you were going to mention it. I mean, one thing that's known, we talk on this show about the drinking culture in China, mainland China, but Mongolia is kind of at another level in a way, and heavy drinking and sort of being in that area, you actually are from a family that, like mine, basically was affected pretty heavily by the dad drinking too much in a way. What was that sort of like for you?
The thing I do not understand is that, I don't know why my grandpa would try to train my dad to drink when my dad is like 3 years old or something. It's I just couldn't understand.
No, train him to drink. What is that? What do you mean?
Just to have fun or to, when it's in Mongolia it's cold,
right.
Especially in winter. My grandpa loved baijiu. Before every meal, my grandpa would have warm, a little bit baijiu would drink with some, peanuts or some other dishes. And with my dad around, my grandpa would, feed my dad a little bit baijiu.
And he's like 3? Like even a tiny little bit?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't believe my grandpa would think that's, it's fun, exciting. But I just do not understand why a parent would, feed their kids alcohol. And that makes my dad, drinking all the way from school.
Wow.
Drink more and more. And my dad even have the stomach surgery that half of it you'd cut out.
Really?
Yeah.
Like when? Like you mean like
20s.
Like as a young man? Jeez.
Yeah. I was maybe 4 years or something. Maybe Chinese people are not that good with alcohols when born genetically, not good with alcohols. But when you're in a Mongolia culture, you drink as Mongolian people.
Right.
Your body can't hold it.
I see.
Yeah. The worst part is that actually the most dark part of my childhood is that I don't think I have a healthy or happy childhood. That my dad would go crazy every time my dad drank so much that my dad never hit me or anything. My dad loved me, but the problem is my mom. My dad would be drunk and hit my mom. Like, I always have this bad dream that me and my mom would hide me in a dark room. We have this little room to stock food. Mm-hmm. It's totally dark and cold. Mm-hmm. When my mom know my dad would get drunk, my mom would hide me in a dark little room with my mom. My mom would ask me to keep quiet, to not breathe or breathe quietly, to not let my dad find us. Me and my mom would just hide in a food stocking room, in a very dark little small room, and not be found by my dad. It's horrifying memory.
Wow. So that's intense. So you would she would hide out there with the hope that until he kind of would fall asleep, basically, and sober up.
Yeah. And my dad would try to find me and my mom everywhere.
But he just never knew that was your place. That was a place to hide.
A lot of times we were found and my mom got beat up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I remember the time my dad just scratched my mom's face. It's a lot of blood.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Well, I don't mean to take it so dark for you, but I mean it's.
Yeah, my dad was an asshole. He's a monster.
Yeah.
To me and my mom. A lot of times I ask my mom, why would you not divorce him and go live a life? My mom stayed in that marriage purely for me. She wanted me to have a normal family like any other kids. Yeah. A lot of times I ask my mom, why aren't you divorced? I'm graduated.
Yeah.
Why are you still being with that asshole? Yes, I know my mom has a lot of struggles in her marriage. Until this year, my mom had a surgery. My dad taking good care of my mom. My dad cook for my mom and do a little everything for my mom. At that point, I kind of I'm really glad that my mom, stayed. Bottom line is that my mom loved my dad so, she, my mom got married against my will, against her parents' will.
Okay. She wanted to marry your dad so much back in the day. Yeah. There was something about him that was compelling.
Yeah. It's probably one of the reasons my mom, she can't just quit her marriage because that's her choice.
She fought for it in the first place, and she was going to fight to somehow get through it or reform it.
Yeah. My grandma and grandpa from my mom's side were so not happy about my dad. Yeah, back then.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I know that's not easy, and I know it took a lot out of you to share that, but I'm also happy to say that I know the answer is that things are different now, right?
Yeah, as my dad getting older, right now he's, from my point of view, he's a old, skinny man. He's really, it's maybe his redemption or something. He's really taking care of good care of families. He's taking good care of my mom after surgery. And even my uncle, his big brother, after the, kidney transplant surgery.
Oh,
and my dad giving birth to his big brother.
Oh.
Yeah, help my uncle to wash his hair like every week, maybe twice a week or something like that. And my grandma. Yeah, my grandma broke her arms again this year.
Her arms?
One
of her arms? Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Super,
It's kind of important.
Yeah.
So he's been helping take care of her, though,
yeah,
and doing
everybody.
stuff?
My dad is taking good care of everybody. I'm proud of my dad. I love him.
Oh, well, that's really awesome. It's nice that the person who is the most broken can try to do the healing. Thank you for that. It's very, very meaningful.
So I still remember that I was so angry that I know my dad loved me. I didn't talk to my dad for a year. I just, make him like, another man walking on the street. I totally ignored my dad for a year to punish him.
You don't even know this. Guess how long I went without talking to mine?
How long?
Over 10 years.
Oh my God.
Yep. Put him in the penalty box for about 10, 11 years. Anyway, enough about Brendan. Let's get back to the Susie Qin story. So we understand the motivation. I understand the motivation even better about you wanting to get the hell out of there. And on we have our cheat sheet of bullet points, and we actually don't even really talk about school. So let's do this without even having notes, to sort of like as a conversation prompt, because your school story, and in this part of it you won't get into, but I know that actually your mom spent a bit of time, we don't have to get into the details unless you want to, but I know your mom spent a lot of time with you actually in school at times, but you worked your way through college. Where did you go to? So we said Nanjing. Yeah. And so what was what did you study in college? And then also your mom was kind of like your sister roommate for a while.
That's a very different adventure for my mom. When I was in college, I got job opportunities. So it's not a part-time job; it's a full-time job. In my third year, I really want to do the work. So I asked my mom to come to the campus and just sit in a classroom, and whenever professors name everybody, my mom would raise her hand and pretend to be me.
Wow.
That's crazy, but that's 2 years of working with different people. That was office. That was Maryland, University of Maryland. They have this project with the Nanjing University. So they had this office in Nanjing that I worked there for 2 years. I was pretty happy to be there to meet different kinds of all kinds of professors, and to know, it's a little eye opener for me, for a little girl from a small town, to see the world.
So that's a really interesting position. I mean, a lot of people people I know in the West have to balance like work and life and school for whatever reason. I mean, I worked with your college, so I took forever to get a bachelor's degree. So it's definitely not a lot of fun. And in your case, you had this great work opportunity. But yeah, so your mom was like, when you couldn't attend, sometimes she would like mark you present, and then you would get recordings of the classes. But you did the actual work, just to be clear for the record, right? You did all the test taking.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, you're nodding. You need to say this. I don't want people to think that you somehow got a free pass and that your mom actually earned the degree.
Definitely.
Nice. So, what was your first job outside of school? I know the story. You had a pretty interesting collision with a sort of a bit of a celebrity of sorts, or an infamous Chinese boss character, by way of your first job outside of college. What was that job, and who's this boss?
I graduated in 2007, just a year before Beijing Olympic Games. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of opportunities in hospitality industry. My first job is working in the hotel near the bird nests. Mm-hmm. That's if you know anything about the dragon-shaped building hotel called Pangu, 7-star hotel.
Right. And to be clear, when we talked about it, it's like the international hotel, like there is no 7. That's a made-up thing. I mean, you have 5 stars. But this is a made-up thing.
7-star means super 5-star.
It's a made-up thing to say we're like better than a 5-star.
Back then, I remember our purchasing department bought a lot of fancy stuff from Paris, like that fancy,
it's
better,
even better, spectacular place, as I understand it. It was a noteworthy, fantastic place.
Yeah.
But so you worked there, and your degree. What was your actual degree in? Was it in? It was in accounting.
Yeah, accounting is my major. Right,
and so you went to work there. And who is the owner of this enterprise? Who's the boss at the hotel? This is quite a character. Yeah, who's a bit infamous.
One day I was watching TV show on YouTube. Then I saw this recommendations. I was like, wait a minute, that was my boss back then in the hotel. his name is Guo Wengui. He's now doing YouTube. He's a YouTuber now.
Yeah. Ironically, he's a so-called billionaire Chinese YouTuber who's hiding out in his penthouse in Manhattan with an amazing view of Central Park. But we don't get as you know, we don't get too super political on this show because we like our friends in China to be able to access the show. So we talk truth, but we sort of use euphemisms and sort of let people fill in their own blanks. But let's say that he's basically raised a lot of ruckus about a bunch of mainland. He's a guy. I'll say this because you're a Chinese person. I don't want to get you in trouble. He's basically a guy who allegedly got himself into some trouble and allegedly left mainland with a whole bunch of money, and to sort of maybe protect himself has been talking a lot of shit about people back here and the things that they're doing. So he's somebody who's very much wanted by the authorities here, and they would just love him just to shut the hell up, I think. Yeah. But he's very vocal about his criticisms now that it doesn't benefit him, because he used to be like a very, he used to be like waving a different flag and beating a different drum until it didn't work. It's
actually a really smart move to do a YouTube channel.
Why do you think that is?
Because he's saying is that, hey, I'm good. I'm still alive.
So you think it's good because he's able to
without the channel, we don't know if he'll still be all right or in jail or something. Yeah, he's there, a good way to stay alive.
But he was your boss at the hotel. What was it like having this guy as the guy that you dealt with?
Do you know anybody, a poor guy, all of a sudden become rich? That would
Yeah. So he was the definition of that. He was. I hate to invoke the current occupant of the White House, but there's a very Trumpian thing. Of course, he was born rich and got richer, but there's a type of there's a saying that people use who want to be critical of Trump. He's a poor person's idea of a rich person.
Yeah.
So being that he was this kind of street smart guy who was self-made and didn't play by the rules because he didn't know what all the rules were. I understand he had a pretty unorthodox way of soliciting opinions and running his company and holding his meetings, right? How did he do that? He didn't have like a big conference room with top execs, right? He kind of, what was his style?
He really bring all the staff in a parking garage, like thousands of people, thousands of staff, and have meetings. That's that's not a usual way to manage. He actually fired a lot of, good managers in our hotel, really qualified, really good managers, just, out of the blue.
Huh.
Yeah.
And so wait, so you're saying that he would have rallies of thousands of people who owed their livelihood or success to him. He would have basically rallies.
Yeah.
Okay, well, gee, that doesn't sound familiar at all. So, moving on, what was your job after the hotel? You moved into a space that I know something about, which was the Chinese online video world. But what's significant is this was kind of the early days, as I understand it, of transitioning from like the DVDs and the pirated DVDs that they sold in the racks and stuff, and moving to online video because the internet was beginning to be fast enough post-Olympics. So it was an interesting kind of learning experience for you in a lot of ways, right? This wasn't a sector you had any connection to, anything like that. So what was that like, and what did you kind of take away from that experience?
When it comparing to the traditional media, people still watching TV, and this new thing, people watching TV shows or movies online. It's, I think it's a really, really good sector, to go to. Mm-hmm. Then I realize it is not.
Okay.
Because first of all, IP is always very expensive.
To actually purchase the rights legally to distribute, it's expensive. Yeah.
But what we do back then, it's embarrassing. But I still remember that when time the company does not exist anymore.
Sure,
so I think I can.
And China's come a long way. I know it's an embarrassing. This historical. This is like 10 years ago. So you can say this.
It's the usual way people do the thing is that I still remember that one day.
They steal it, Susie. Stealing. Stealing is the word we're looking for. There, I said it.
Yes, one day we opened our storage and to clean the stuff. We found a lot of old DVD and VCDs. That's the old way to, grab all the contents and put it on the internet. So
it was a video platform that was actually pirating material in the first place. And
yeah, basically, yes. And we had consequences. What
happened?
Many years, we paid a lot of, penalties, a lot of lawsuits, endless lawsuits. That's the reason why this company, end up like bankrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, I mean, again, this is a long time ago. I work in, film and TV internationally, but, I'm based here. But it used to be that people didn't pay for IP. And this is still, there's still some of this. I'm not trying to whitewash it, but it's way better. Yeah. People want high quality. So nowadays, people will pay and do pay.
Yeah.
And it's a lot cheaper. Like if you're a listener, if you're one of my friends and listeners in the States and you knew like the equivalent of what it costs, whether like the equivalent of buying a download from iTunes or Amazon or subscribing to the equivalent of a Netflix here, it's like it's so much cheaper. You're like, what? But, hey, it's different markets, different economy. So that was your first big foray into the internet space, though. And since then, your jobs have had something to do with the internet. I mean, more than just as a sales tool.
Maybe a Chinese person would spend 1 million on very expensive cars. They wouldn't spend like 10 kuai on a movie. That's not what they do. So I changed my job to car media industry. That was a booming industry for many years that people, if Chinese families are getting more money and they want to spend a lot of money on cars and to make their life better, like higher quality, stuff like that. So it's a really, good companies. I met a lot of good colleagues there.
And so specifically, what were you doing and what was the company itself doing?
Oh, it's the name of the company is All to Home. It is a New York Stock Exchange listed company, and I work in a FP&A team. It's basically we do budgeting, and our main goal is to manage the expectation of investors.
So your current company is actually in what sector specifically?
Education.
Right, and it's online education. And we won't talk about the company specifically, that's where you work currently, right? But what is kind of the general idea? You're in this area that's pretty booming here, right?
Yeah, it's K-12. We have this technology that I still remember when I was in school, when I was a kid, if I found a question I do not know how to solve, I would ask my teacher or ask the smarter kids in my class. I don't think my parents can solve the problem, but those people are you to ask for, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays, the kids don't do that anymore. They use their phone just to scan the question, and then you will get an answer. If you can't, you still do not understand the answer, you can find an online tutor to help you explain the questions and how you solve the problems, just like a little bit like Didi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of what's interesting about this space is this is a whole, this is like a whole sector, like subsector of the education sector here in China are all of these different online learning hacks because, there's such a focus on education in China and people are really want their kids to have the best and the kids are also expected to be proactive and to seek out the help that they need. And this is a way to facilitate it. And there's been a lot said actually on the How China Works podcast about, the pros, but also the cons and like basically the workload on the poor kids. But there's this drive for education and for not letting a baby behind. And, kids as young, as early as your dad was like getting the sips of the drink because your granddad thought that would help make him big and strong, which actually there's roots, traditional Chinese medicine, as I've learned. There's a belief that a little bit of baijiu every day helps to make you strong and healthy and ward off stuff. So there's probably some kind of an old school traditional Chinese medicine angle from that, right? So ironically, your granddad was probably trying to help, was probably the idea, not to open that can of worms back up. But by the same token, there's this big push towards education, but kids are being pushed as young as like 2.5, 3 years old before most of them are pre-verbal or like not making a lot of sense, where they're doing all these extracurricular activities. And it's kind of amazing. There was a great article I read recently, not to tangent too much on your interview, but there was a really interesting article I read just the other day that was a tale of two kids. And it was like a wealthy tiny little boy, and then his they didn't know each other, but they were comparing and contrasting a little boy from like a wealthy, successful family in Shanghai and what his day's like, and then the exact same kid generically, except from like a poor, like a working class family where like the dad worked off someplace, and the mom was doing her best to raise him and work a job. And the boy from the wealthy family spent 50 hours a week in English lessons or training of some kind, in addition to all his other schoolwork. And the other boy got the equivalent of half an hour of English training outside of school a week. And they're 7 years old. And it's like the idea that a 7-year-old, like for Western people, their brains are melting. The idea that any kid has 50 hours of anything committed outside of school is insane. But that's just his English stuff. Between his private tutors and what he did with his iPad, and maybe even using your company probably. But, the stuff he did, it was just absolutely insane. So I'm off on a tangent, but I also wanted to give context because we're trying to flatten the world. But you really I do know that you really are finding this very fulfilling. And again, we won't say the name. I know it's more of a startup, but it's growing leaps over bounds, and there's a demand. Some startups in China, as my friend Elliot Zagman has talked about, some of the tech startups, and there's tech is a part of yours, but tech is to deliver the product, right? But there's some companies that tech is the product specifically. And, too many of these tech companies, they raise money and they use that for ads and to prop up the PR of a company. And that drives this seeming growth, but it's a giant bubble. Your company's growing like head over tail because of demand.
Yeah.
Right. And there are a lot of these good education companies that are doing that.
Especially in China, education is kind of a market with no roof.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like so many people. And especially the tradition is the Chinese way of a Chinese take education so important that they want to spend everything, like really everything in their family to support their kids to study. I think that's probably from the, old China way of their kids to, get into this exam. They have their national exam.
For the Gaokao?
Similar like Gaokao, but the older way, like Keju. Like if their kids pass that exam, they will go directly to the government, be the
it was like a civil service exam that if you did really well, you could go into like you could be on the track, like a prestige track for like a government job of some kind.
Because nowadays it's like a state governor, or even the officer in a central government. Mm-hmm. Then the whole family, their life changed.
Oh, right.
Because of this education.
Right. That's a prestigious job, and it brings other benefits for the people, the family members of that person.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I get to take a little bit of credit for helping to really get you into podcasts, but then you have watered your own garden here, so to speak. You're a really big podcast fan. So what are some of your favorite shows, and why do you like them?
I like books.
Yeah.
And I like audiobooks. Before I know you, I'm audiobook fan. I listen to lots of audiobooks. But after I know Brendan, he introduced this very fun way to get to know the world, which is also free.
Yeah.
Which is also very awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And then I opened this new world of a podcast. My favorite one, of course, is Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom.
Oh, it's very nice. I wasn't trying to prompt you for a plug, but I appreciate that I'm one of your favorites. I know I'm one of your favorites.
I always take this show as a China related or Beijing related topic show that it's so close to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the show talks about is happening around me.
Right.
So that's what I really like about this show. It's different from the audiobook. The audiobook is like, it's a whole system of one, information. It's not a pieces of information. It's with a whole system of information.
Yeah, it's a focused, coherent argument, unlike this show.
Yeah.
which is slices of life with interesting people like you.
But it's with the audiobook, it's usually the old information. It's not happening right now.
Right.
So that's the
by nature of the thing of publishing a book.
Yeah, it's not a good part of listening an audiobook. But with a Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom, I always know what's the exciting thing in the city and what's going on everywhere else in China, and how people take what is the take of other people.
Well, that's so as an actual Chinese person, that's what I'm sort of curious to ask you about, not in a self-serving way, because we talked about this plenty off mic, but now that I'm putting you on the spot just a little bit on the mic, what is it, how is it for you? I mean, do you feel like you learn like from seeing your country through foreigners' eyes, basically? Is it pretty interesting to hear all these people who moved here? The shows mostly are migrants or expats. So what's it like for you to hear your country told to you through the eyes of somebody else?
Actually, that part is not what I'm really only interested in.
Sure.
And I'm interested in stories.
Mm-hmm. Like how people, like the people's journey from A to B.
Yeah. How what is their journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm really inspired by a lot of them. Yeah.
I've had a lot of people on really, this is not just blatant, kissing the ass of the people who've been nice enough to sit down. I'm super inspired by a lot of the people who I have on the show, and I've been, so happy to make good friends with a lot of people. And, and some people it's just fast, casual acquaintance and, friendly and no bad vibes with anybody that I can think of, right? But I mean, some people become like some of my very best friends and a couple of business partners, either longer or shorter term. But there's just a great network of people to have met. But yeah, I'm likewise really super inspired by the stories I've heard.
And I don't know why. Maybe now I know. When you talk to Brendan, he's such a good, podcaster and listener. He helps you to open up and tell the story. I like a lot of the part that people being so honest of their, experiences, that it's really, inspiring and touching.
Is that why you wanted to share kind of the trick of your family stuff? Share a little bit of that.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And also, what's part of this is, the people hearing this are hearing the finished product. As you know, we had most of the edits in this one are on me because of losing, having to find the right question. And I will tell you, some people, I could tell this funny little anecdote for people who listen to the show here, which is anybody who's still listening, we're probably an hour in, even minus the edits here. There have been a few people who I could tell, like if they didn't have any background to hear how the finished product goes, there have been a few people that I could tell were thinking, what is this guy's, like, who's this clown? Because they hear that sometimes sometimes I have no edits or almost no edits and I'm totally in sync with somebody. sometimes just the nature of the story, the nature of the guest, sometimes I have to pull it out of people. Some people are not natural talkers. Some people are not linear thinkers. And again, there's nothing wrong with this, but sometimes it's really hard to find a through line, even if I've done research or know the people. So there have been a few people that have heard me basically fight my way through an interview with them to make it interesting. And then the finished product, you don't hear all that. But I mean, there's 20 minutes that's going to be on the editing floor from us. And I know you better than almost anybody here. And it's not your fault. Again, it's me trying to find the right question, trying to connect the dots. So it's really, this is a little meta. I guess I'm just feeling more chatty with you. But let's talk about, let's briefly mention a few of your other favorite shows and what you like. Because I'm really excited. I love hearing your tales. Both of these, one show, I know your favorites. One of the shows is a show that I am way to you, and one of the shows is a show you totally found on your own that you absolutely love, and I know the host. I mean, I don't know personally, but I know who the host is, and I'm excited to hear your take on these two very different Hollywood kind of people whose podcasts you like so much.
Another show I listen the most is that when I jog, I like to listen to Anna Faris. Unqualified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost even, subscribe their sponsor service called Can I say the name?
Oh, what is it?
Latote. They have this sponsor that I really want to support,
that's
support
a funny
their
story.
Show.
Yeah, you like the show so much you want to support the sponsor, and then it turns out that there was some offer and you couldn't access it in mainland China. Actually, I remember you tweeted at her co-host and producer, Anna's co-host and producer, Sim Sarna. You tweeted at him. I basically loved the show. By the way, I went to support your sponsor, but doesn't work in mainland China. But sorry.
Yeah.
But that was funny because he actually liked it. I think he liked it. I can't remember if he retweeted it or not, but I know he liked it. But what do you like about Anna's show so much?
It's
she's pretty freaking unfiltered.
Yeah, so funny, and a lot of interactions with their listeners. They're taking the calls from their listeners, and Anna's being so compassionate with the people. Yeah. They
do sort of like a we're not professional. Well, her it's called unqualified. We're unqualified to give advice, but we're going to anyway. And so they try to do help solve listener problems as one segment that they do toward the end of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny.
I don't know if you watched the newest episode of Mom. You probably not.
I have not. No.
The new one is about, the mom show is every mom is being, drug dealer, alcoholics, or, being a teenage mom.
Okay.
Yeah. That Anna's, Anna in the show, her daughter being so angry about her that she started podcasting and talking about all the horrible experiences being Anna's daughter.
Being TV Anna's daughter.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but also very funny.
I'm sure they play it for laughs, and of course, Mom is Anna Faris's. It's her sitcom she does, where Allison Janney, the great.
Oh my God!
You can't say Allison Janney's name without adding the great Allison Janney plays her mom. So your other favorite show is from a proper stand-up comedian.
Yeah, first time I remember first time I listened that show, I really don't like Mark Maron. Why? I was thinking, why somebody just keep talking about negative stuff of himself, and I just can't stand it. And after a while, that I totally understand that.
So WTF with Mark Maron. I think I edited out the part where you said the name of the show.
Yeah.
So that's your other favorite show. And so we're one of your top three. But so Maron really, between this show and Anna Faris and Mark Maron, it really is three very different things.
Yeah.
Although I can see some,
so
flatter
different.
myself to see some similarities.
It's so different. Do you remember the time when Mark Maron in Anna Faris show? And another one, Anna Faris in Mark Maron's show?
Yeah.
They really can't,
They couldn't sync up. I mean, because Anna's kind of used to doing her own thing. And So yeah, Marilyn, her show is a super awkward fit. But he's pro enough to. I mean, they're both pros, but they're different kinds of pros. Yeah. And he was really trying to make it work. But he's so used to like having some structure, and her type of structure seems very freewheeling. And yeah, she couldn't sort of like stay with the plot on his show. So I mean, I enjoyed it, but also he in his intro he set it up and said, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable and weird. Yeah. But I think we got somewhere.
And we have this metaphor for the show is that the game, truth or dare,
right?
So on our first show is more like dare, super unfiltered.
That's true.
There's a lot of crazy stuff in there, but McMahon's show is more like truth. It's totally make people open up and tell their story. Yeah, it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah, he's as you know. I mean, I got to sort of recommend that one, and I'm glad you gave him a chance because having followed it from, I mean, not from the beginning, but I came into it when he was still wallowing in the depths of despair. When I came into it, and he's had this insane arc of success and prosperity, and I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker saying those words, but he has just, between good circumstance and just continuing to plug away. But I definitely related. That's the thing, is I related to, I mean, he started his show basically out of desperation. And I wasn't desperate to start this show, but I've done other things. I've had other moves that were out of just like feeling like there's no options left. I was in a great place when I started the podcast, which is helping to get off to a good foot. So in terms of reaching out, as we're sort of, moving toward the home stretch here of what will be a nice, very hearty, episode here for the holidays, you have gotten involved in some interesting things and you have some thoughts about friends and family. But, you, speaking of opening up and telling stories, you've gotten really excited to be part of Toastmasters here. Yeah,
I'm about to be toast. To be a
doing great so far. You're setting the bar really high. We're not cutting this, by the way. It's great. So yeah. But yeah, but you just recently joined, but you've been thinking about it for a while.
It's a guy. His name is Tony. I met from a volunteer work. He's in Toastmaster for many years. Mm-hmm. He suggests me to go there. Yeah. After 2 years, I finally, participated one time, and it feels so good. It's a lot of people from different companies, from totally different background, get together and share interesting, fun stuff. Yeah. It's a thing that, it feels good when you're on a stage.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was like one of the annoying kid, like to draw people's attention and singing and dancing to, it's annoying. I hate those kids now. But I was like that. Yeah. But I do not. Doing what I'm doing now, I don't get much chance to, present.
Yeah. You're very head down. I know you deal with, you deal with like your director of your department and like your CEO and a few people in between, but you're reporting to like small groups of people basically.
Yeah. We do a lot of analysis. We do a lot of PowerPoint and report.
Right.
But I am not the one to present, to do the presentation. So this is a very good opportunity for me to, share my ideas, share what I'm thinking to people in my way.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward, 2019 of Toastmaster to get toasted.
And we won't let the cat out of the bag yet because this is a very in the works thing. But I do know that you've got something else you're working on, kind of an interesting little top secret project that might be a way to also help integrate people, kind of a networky thing that's sort of in your sector. So we're not going to spoil it, but are you excited about the possibilities of taking your speaking abilities into a bigger platform?
many years ago, I realized that I am not a scientist. All the good ideas are not from, thinking by myself. Most of the good ideas are from talking to people, sharing, chatting, even arguing intensely. Those good ideas are from there.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking in 2019, I'm going to invest more of my time to talking to people, sharing and listening. And that part, I'm going to invest more.
Well, I think that's a great use of your time for all the reasons we talked about. You know how much podcasting and being able to have this ongoing dialogue has been useful for me. And frankly, I'm really impressed that you find the time to do this, because you also have just, I think, honestly, a very big heart, not to embarrass you, but your volunteer work that you've done, a lot of volunteer work with disabled kids and orphans and stuff. And you met some really great friends through this. Could you sort of talk about this a little bit? I know our friends that run Shepherd's Field could sure use and would sure love a little bit of, good words spread in their direction. So let's spread it.
The volunteer work idea was inspired by a book I read many years ago. The book is The Heart and the Fist by Eric Greitens. Mm-hmm. He was a Navy SEAL and got his PhD from Oxford University. Yes, he volunteered in many, many countries, and now I believe he works on a program for disabled veterans. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. His book's really inspiring that. And also I got a photographer friend showed me this photos he took in Shepard's Field. Yeah, I was thinking maybe someday I will take my time to go down there and check those cute kids there. And that's why I started to, volunteer and met team.
So Shepard's Field is this orphanage down in Tianjin, and they do focus on helping kids who have either birth defects or some kind of physical disability or something like that.
That's where I met my friend Grady and Big A. Grady just called me yesterday to say Merry Christmas, and we had a little bit chat. He was a kid grown up in a Shepherd's Field Children's Village. Mm-hmm. Now he's back into his hometown orphanage in Fujian province. It's really far from Beijing. I had this small little warm memory with Grady that one time he's doing his surgery in Beijing. I was thinking about, isn't it nice to have a little, spend a little time with Grady and have this little memory with Grady that I took Grady to do you know Mall Life House?
Yeah. It's a former rock and roll club. Yeah, I was there back in 2013 or something. Yeah. They're closed now.
Yeah,
it was a rock and roll and punk club. It was pretty rocking.
Yeah, it's Grady never been to a live music show. That must have blown his mind. Yeah. Yeah, and thanks to all the kind people help me and Grady to carry the wheelchair after the surgery. I took Grady to the Mall Live music show. We had a great time together.
Awesome.
Yeah. After that, we go and watch movie. That's the first time both he and I watched the IMAX.
Oh,
it's a big screen.
Cool. Yeah.
Since Grady is already in wheelchair, so he can't. It's a lot of hassle to move himself to the wheelchair.
Yeah, so he stays in his chair.
Yeah, he stays in his chair and just right in front of the big, huge IMAX screen. That is very different experience.
So if he's sitting right in front of the screen, it must have been totally immersive and mind blowing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very
nice. And who is Big A? Is your nickname for your friend?
Big April.
Yeah, April. And Big and she is, I believe. Please bear with me, social justice warriors. I believe the politically correct term is little person. She's a little person in a wheelchair, and she's all kinds of awesome. Though one of the biggest hearts of anybody I've been lucky to meet in Beijing. And you met her. She was volunteering. She's an adult volunteer at Shepard's Field Children's Village. And she herself had grown up in orphanages.
Yeah.
Not there, but she'd grown up in other orphanages.
Yeah, she actually from Tianjin orphanage. She grown up there.
From that city, but like she was from like the city orphanage, basically.
Yes. She volunteered. She also volunteered in Shepard's Field.
The statistics came up in research for the other show, and they're not the top of my head, but I think there's something like, this is not the exact number, but there's something like, as of the survey from, I believe, a year or two ago, there were reported like 89 million disabled people in China, of which like 25 million, I remember that number, 25 million needed full-time, or 27 million, I think, but right around there, needed absolute full-time care. And of course, 1.4 billion people, mathematically, do the math. I mean, but numerically, that's a lot of people, and these people need help and stuff. But somebody like Big A, I mean, she actually goes out her way to help other people, I don't think she sees herself as, in a light of, I mean, she's the one giving the help.
Yes. And it's a really good memory that Brennan and I took Big A to comedy club.
That's right.
This year. This is a very, very special day.
Yeah, it was really great to be able to have her come out and join us. She was in Beijing for some business that she had to attend to. And, we were at a bar and restaurant seeing Muhammad Magdi. It's where we got to see him and meet him. He's been on the show previously now, which is great, but that's where I first met him. And it was so cool because, I mean, I don't think she's ever been to a live comedy show. Certainly not English language comedy. I mean, I just said she understands some English, but mostly she just enjoyed the energy of the night. And Muhammad was really cool and he sat down and talked with her a bit and was interested to know what was her story. And it was really great just to be able to have her come out. And that's the challenge. There's not the kind of access here, which in the States and other places there are countries in Europe that have made more of an effort even than the States. But handicapped access is like a big thing that's mandated by federal law in the U.S. And this place, there's no elevator. And, it was up second flight of stairs. When I got there, I don't know if you helped her or somebody else helped, but basically she was already there with her wheelchair. But, like when we left, I carried her down and, you had her bag and somebody, I think, helped with the wheelchair. Mm. And it was just nice to be able to see somebody somebody who's got some physical challenge, to say the least, but to be able to just enjoy themselves like anybody else, So growing up when and where you did, and your early 30s, so what was it like in your parents' home? What was kind of the dynamic, And then we'll talk a little bit about the generation previous, because it's an interesting contrast.
Yeah, there's a very funny thing in my parents' home is that, I don't often go back to my hometown, maybe once a year.
Right, for Spring Festival.
Yeah, for Spring Festival. 1 year when I go back, I saw my mom put a huge Chairman Mao portrait, the needlework. My mom did
like the embroidery.
Her own, yeah.
Wow.
The dining room. Mm-hmm. It's a huge one. I asked my mom, don't you think we should hang our own family portrait in our own home? Why?
Yeah. It wasn't mandated at that point. You're like a generation past where that was like mandated to be displayed.
Yeah. It's basically every time my parents come to visit Beijing, the most important place they will go to is, to visit the body of Chairman Mao.
To visit Mao's tomb.
That's very important to my parents, because my parents take Chairman Mao as like not even leaders of this country. They take Chairman Mao as like God. or something. One time I asked my mom, don't you think God is in Lama Temple or in church? Do you know what my mom replied?
I'm sitting here waiting.
My mom said, it's not of your business. We're from different generations. Mm-hmm. Can you just leave us alone?
Okay, all right. That's a fair answer.
All right.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah.
That's maybe the best answer.
Yeah. And I still remember that one time my mom told me a story of an argument between my mom and my grandpa.
Okay.
Her dad. That my mom said something good about Deng Xiaoping.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was pissed. My grandfather was like the old generation. They took Chairman Mao really, really seriously and think Deng Xiaoping was bad. So my grandpa threw a plate over my mom's head.
Wow.
Yeah, that was very intense.
Flying dishes, huh?
Yeah. So that's, I guess from generation to generation, people have different ideas because of a lot of historical reasons.
Yeah.
They have different ideas of the world. So I get it's complicated. I'm respect of how my parents take on the, how they say the world. Yeah. And besides, my very important plan for 2019 or 2020 is that I really want to take my parents to Europe. I want my parents to see the world through their own eyes.
Yeah,
not just through books or through what they hear. I just want them to really see the world with their own eyes.
So that leads us to our wrapping up closing thoughts here. We know a bit about your plans for 2019, and that's a really fun one. That's a really admirable one. I think it'll be fascinating for your folks. What are some things that you wish people knew about, your home here that you do, right? Like what is it about this place that makes you want to stay here?
When I thinking about the city I'm living, Beijing, I couldn't be more grateful. It's all the opportunities the city bring to me, and all the smart people I work with, makes me who I am today. I'm super grateful for that, and I see good future for the city, and more opportunities gonna be here. So I'm really looking forward, and I'm gonna prepare myself for that.
Awesome. Susie, thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's the show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to find out more information about the show or to contact Susie. There is information in the show notes as always. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be coming to you live from Los Angeles next week.